Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So, we do have a ton of stuff to go over. We obviously have this very large winter storm that will be occurring in the next, really 24 hours. It will be starting within the next 6 to 12 hours across the plains. It has already dropped a significant amount of snow across the southwest. We have a ton of details to go over. So, without further ado, let me just say one thing. If you guys like these videos, like this channel, consider subscribing. Hitting the thumbs up button also helps out, obviously, if you enjoyed it. And I do have a Patreon in the description down below if you would like to support my channel more directly. But it's amazing just the fact that you're watching. I do want to say one thing. Everyone always asks me when I'm going to take down my Christmas tree, and we will for sure, as I will be starting seeds for my garden, and I'm going to be using that spot over there where that Christmas tree is. So just to let you guys know, I always get a lot of questions regarding that. All right, let's start tracking this. So in today's video, I will be obviously talking about the system, going over models, but I do want to focus quite a bit going over individual cities, individual National Weather Service offices, and telling you what I think and what they're showing in terms of the forecast of snow, obviously. I will be also trying to go over the severe weather, or at least the rainy side of this, as there is a potency to this system, a big one. And notice right off the bat what we have is not too significant anything right now, but you know, you could tell that this thing has potential as soon as it moves off to the plains. Anyone that tracks the weather, it always looks very miserable across the mountains, but then once it moves out into the plains, it either explodes or it just continues its weakening trend. In this case, it is going to rather explode, and in a very dramatic fashion. So this is the European model at 12 o'clock noon, and this was for 5 hours ago, as I'm recording this at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Notice that by today in the evening at around 6 p.m. there will already be showers across Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, spreading, finishing off the snow in the southwest. There have been some rather significant amounts. It will continue into tonight, into the overnight hours. I do want to quickly go and show you these snowfall amounts, Notice that for the southwest and Salt Lake City, for example, has seen some pretty good snow. These red dots are obviously the mountain areas, but even the city itself got around 3 to 4 inches. A bit further to the north, Ogden, on the northeastern side of the lake, has gotten about 6 inches. But look at that, some 2 feet amounts of snow. Southern Utah varying quite a bit, obviously, on elevation. I'm assuming, notice 10 inches, 11 inches across some of these locations. And that was a trend also in Colorado. Notice that we saw quite a good amount across Flagstaff. See right there, the airport officially got around 9 inches of snowfall. Just north of Los Angeles, 18 inches. And this will probably continue the trend into the Midwest. This light snow, if you recall, was from the system yesterday that we talked about. Overall, it did a generally good job as forecasted. I do want to say that some of these amounts were a bit lighter than what I was calling for. I thought that maybe Minneapolis would get a bit more. Generally, though, it was a 3 to 6 inch event. 5.6 right there. You can see the only 6-inch report was across southwestern Minnesota, but there were some awfully close ones, as you can see, 5.6, 5.3. A lighter snow event, and notice even into Detroit there were some decent amounts of snow. Northern Illinois did not get much, and it was funny because the radar was all lit up yesterday across these locations, but no snow fell as the radar was picking it up accurately. It was snowing, but several thousand feet up, it was just such dry air that even this moisture-laden system will have a bit of a trouble pushing the snow into this dry air. Notice southern Wyoming also did get quite a bit of snowfall. Let's go back to the European model and start talking about this. So notice that we have the system. Look at that. Within 6 hours, this thing congregates a ton of precipitation. Obviously, here's where that severe weather risk is going to be at its highest. It shouldn't be overly high, as this system doesn't seem to have a lot of dynamics working with it to produce, a large-scale tornado outbreak or of that sort. In order for those storms to produce those outbreaks, usually it's later on in the winter, say February, late February, early March is when we really have to worrying about that. I'm not saying this is not something to worry about, as even when there's a slight risk or an enhanced risk of severe weather, those storms could pack a punch. And not to mention, the rain will be heavy, which obviously will then feed into the snowy side of the system. Notice, this is at Monday, 7 o'clock 7 o'clock for the East, 6 o'clock Central Standard Time in the morning. I am using the European model for the timing and for the most information because this model has been very accurate throughout the last 4 or 5 days with the system. It handled it the best, and I still think it has a relatively the best handle with the most realistic amounts. Right, notice that as we push this into noon Monday, so this is lunchtime, brunch time, whatever it may be, right? Some people maybe even just waking up at this point. Notice that into Illinois, Indiana, we do have some snow. This will have a bit of a struggle making its way into this dry air mass that is still in place across these areas. At this point, it will be just going down across Omaha, northern Kansas, Missouri, northern Missouri, I should say. Much of southern half of Iowa also seeing really heavy amounts of snow or heavy rates of snow, obviously leading to heavy amounts. Notice this rain band kind of splits apart, and I will show you a high-res model that shows that a bit better in just a minute. But notice a bit of a lack of snow may be possible. That's because, well, this huge surge of moisture continues plowing to the east, and this low pressure kind of does its own little thing with a lot of precip on its own end, but it does start filling in. Notice that as we push this into around 6 p.m. tomorrow in afternoon, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, southern Michigan, most of Iowa, excluding northern Iowa, into southern Wisconsin, Nebraska, snowing, right? It's wrapping up across these locations. It was definitely at this point, most of the snow has fallen, and that's the other thing, that this thing will be dropping a lot of snow in a short amount of time, especially for Nebraska, southern Iowa, northern Kansas, northwestern Missouri. Now, notice that while the snow does significantly decrease in snowfall rates, there is a pretty long duration event here. This is at around 12 a.m. Tuesday morning, right? And notice that what we see is this system snow decreasing, as I mentioned, but look at that. It just continues to drag on across Illinois, Michigan, and some of this may be a bit underdone, as there could be a bit more forcing off the lake, for example. Notice that these winds are veering a lot of strong winds off of Lake Michigan, and that's one thing I do want to mention for my folks across northeastern Illinois, southeastern Wisconsin, that the system snow may drop up to 6-7 inches, but then I would not be surprised to see maybe 2 to 3 additional with the lake effect. Now, this isn't looking to be like a massive lake effect event. Sometimes the Chicago has picked up a foot of snow from lake effect. That's not, the support for that isn't there, but a few additional inches is definitely possible. Notice that this pushes off into the northeast, right? New York City, Connecticut, Rhode Island, these locations start seeing the lighter snow. It's not as heavy as previously thought in the week, that it could have been, very heavy snow. There still will be, I think, rather, decent amounts of snow, but I will show you the snowfall amounts in just a bit. I do want to mention that during this time, there could be a bit of lake effect going on into Tuesday and Wednesday across the southeast Wisconsin, northeast Illinois area. Notice, this is another thing I want to say, and it's probably, this system is a bit overshadowed by this one we have right here, but we have another system that takes a very similar track, but it's quite different in the final route, if you will. Once it reaches the plains, notice that for, say, central Missouri, some models show some significant snowfall, meaning potentially up to 3 to 4 to 5 inches across Missouri. Not a blockbuster event. The European is one of the models that keeps it weaker, and notice it brings some snow into Indiana, Illinois, right? And look at that, it develops a beast off the northeast. 969 millibars of low pressure, very, very strong winds, and some models bring this onshore, bringing a decent amounts of snow for the mid-Atlantic, to say the least. So that's definitely something we have to watch for. A lot of guidance is still split on that, and we will have to watch for that as we go into the future. All right, let's go over to the snowfall amounts from this first system. Right, again, notice that if we were to take a look at it, if you were to take a look at it without factoring in that second system, notice that the European keeps amounts on the lower side for sure. I think that a few locations will be approaching potentially the 15 to 16 inch mark. The European does indicate chances of that, but it's rather isolated. Still, though, I mean, it pushes areas like North Platte into the 6-7 inch range, which I think is a possibility. Omaha getting a ton of snow out of this, well over 9 inches. Chicago seeing decent amounts, especially by the lake, and I would say Cook County, Lake County, and maybe the bordering counties around that. Seeing, I would say, anywhere up to 6 to 10 inches. North Central Illinois also seeing decent amounts of snow. Again, if this overperforms, some amounts or some areas in Iowa and Illinois could be already at 5-6 inches by say 10 o'clock in the evening on Monday. So that's definitely that. Notice the sharp cutoff, and that's going to be the other thing that I want to talk about, the sharp cutoff. Look at that, Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin. If this shifts just a bit further to the south, north, you could get much more significant snow, and vice versa if this, shifts further to the south across Kansas City. Notice Michigan, Detroit, I would say 2 to 4 inches for you. Obviously, as you get closer towards the lake, I would say 4 to 5 inch event. Notice New York City, 2 to 3 inches, maybe more closer to 1 to 3. Given that range. Connecticut, Rhode Island, upstate New York, 4 to 5 inches. So not a huge event. I do think it could be an event big enough for snowplows to come out. Obviously here, this will be all the snowplows they have probably will be issued for a system like this, right? Notice that this is the European, right? And I do want to show you just quickly the Canadian amounts, just to show you the differences. There are some slight differences. The Canadian mainly shows pockets of very heavy snow, which I don't think are going to happen, or at least to that extent. I think there will be some amounts potentially in the 1.5 foot, not 2 feet. Notice it does show that lake snow, right? And it starts advertising that second system across the southeast. If we push into the Wednesday time frame, which you can see that drops some decent snow across Kentucky, Tennessee. There's a lot of differencing among the models, and they have a lot of stuff to still go over. Notice the Canadian does put out a bit more snow into, say, New York City, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, northeastern Pennsylvania. It's not looking like a big event for Cleveland, Indianapolis, or into Pittsburgh. Mainly rain, a bit of snow, and some ice is possible. That's the Canadian GFS model. Right, the latest GFS as the newer model run came in. Notice what it does. It definitely goes heavier, especially across southeastern Wisconsin, and it's a bit more heavier towards the north as well. I think that this may be a slightly overdone, but again, if the system shows a lot of potency and vigor, which so far it has across the southwest, then I think this could be definitely possible. Notice it does include some decent amounts across Vermont and New Hampshire, which again will still have to be refined. With that potential weekend system, that second system, it does show snow, but not as much as a Canadian. Now, the GFS parallel has been a decent model with this system, but it does have snowfall on a higher amount. For, again, to say Des Moines or even Chicago, it shows near the 11-inch amount, which isn't out of the question. Notice upstate New York, right? 8, 9, 10 inches of snow potentially with the GFS parallel, which again may be a bit overdone. Into southern Michigan, it shows 6 inches. This model, which I think is a bit on the higher side, but I would not be too surprised to see that, especially given the volatility of the system and how much could change. Notice decent amounts into Kansas. I do want to mention that while the West just got hit by a snowstorm, they will continue to see snow. And as you see, the mountain ranges, the Sierra Nevada, the elevated areas will continue to see large amounts of snow. But even into Arizona and New Mexico and Mexico itself, decent amounts of snow. And in a very long range, you can see that just continues to add on, with many locations seeing definitely a good footprint of snow. Also, you can see more snow in the long range as well. This is just 240 hours out, so through the 3rd of February. Essentially, look at that, 30 inches for Chicago. Now, obviously, that is way too far out to make any excitement, but this is our main two focus, these two systems that will be bringing the snow. Right, let's go over some high-res models. Her model. This is a very good model I like to look at. Let's just go out to the 18-hour mark, as that is what the latest model run takes us out to. Every once in a while, every 6 hours, they go out to 48 hours, this her model, which is just how this model runs. Notice that right now, not much going on. If I were to tell you a beast is going to be dropping snow, you may be wondering where it is. You do see some signs right here, and if you're pointing at this thing being our system, well, you're correct. Notice that we quickly start seeing showers and storms developing across the south. Again, severe weather is potentially a threat. Heavy rain regardless, even if the severe weather doesn't turn severe, right? Notice Kansas into Nebraska, right, into Missouri, Iowa. We start seeing that snowfall rather quickly. Again, there is going to be a bit of sleet, but it does not look to be a significant icing event, as this is more of a north to northeast rather than west to east event. There could be some amounts, though, that are reaching towards the significant criteria. Notice that we do see a bit of lake effect showers off the eastern side, or sorry, the western side of the lake, so a bit different than usual. And notice that the system by tomorrow at around, this is now 6, 7, 8, 9, a.m. in the morning is across much of Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri. You can see this model puts a little bit of a break. Again, whether or not that will be the case, it remains a bit unknown. Potentially, though, there will be some lighter precip right there. Notice very heavy rain to the south, and obviously this only takes us out to 18 hours. Let's go back to the 18Z model run of this model, which takes us out much further. Notice, right, system, a lot of moisture, right? I mean, it goes from a level of 1 to a level of full-blown system within a few hours. So definitely is a impressive system. Notice this again drops snow into even portions of Indiana, Ohio. See, the National Weather Service is not calling for significant amounts here, but, if a band like this were to form and central Illinois gets under the heavier snow for an hour or two, 2 to 3 inches would not be unexpected, but then obviously that would transition to rain and most of that wouldn't melt, or at least a good portion of it. Notice spreading into Chicago by around 5-6 p.m. Again, it may be a bit delayed, even into, southern Wisconsin, northern Indiana, and southern Michigan, as there's a lot of dry air here. Notice affecting portions of northern Delaware, Maryland for a few hours of snowfall. We do have significant snow across the west. Look at that whole band of snow moving across New Mexico, Arizona. Well, really, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, moving into New Mexico. Notice the snow hits Chicago and into portions of southeastern Wisconsin, Michigan, and it continues there for several hours with, again, potentially lake effect following that. Notice that the system does slide into cities like Detroit, into southern New York, northeastern Pennsylvania. This is just one model, and the HER model, unfortunately, is not as accurate as you would think it is, being 48 hours out. Relatively a decent model, but sometimes it goes under a bit of, gets too excited by little tiny changes. So notice the HER model does show out quite a bit of snow here. You can see heavier amounts towards the lake, Lake Michigan right there, potentially reaching up to 10 inches. Notice southern New York also getting in on some of that snow. Again, even if we get an hour or two of this burst of snowfall, we could get several inches. I do think this is overdone quite significantly as the HER model. Again, this is one of its flaws. It sometimes gets too excited by this. Regardless, notice that across Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas, I think this model does a good job at maybe overestimating slightly, but honestly, 16 to 18 inches I don't think is out of the question for a few locations. Notice the mountain snow will be significant. Many areas seeing up to a foot and a half, and a few pockets seeing up to, look at that, 30 plus inches of snowfall, even 45 right there. So decent snow, to say the least. Notice the HER model does put out quite a bit across, say, North Platte. And the National Weather Service shows around 3 to 4 inches, maybe 5. This one shows 6 to 7. So that's something to watch for, these little changes. I would prefer the RAP model as a short-range model, and we do have a more recent model run, so let's take a look at that in terms of snowfall. Again, drops very significant snowfall within a matter of few hours across Kansas into Nebraska, obviously Omaha. You can see this one takes a bit of this heavier axis further north, well into Omaha, even, potentially reaching northern Nebraska. Notice it does show decent amounts of snow, to say the least, across Illinois, southern Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, right? Decent amounts of snow, 7-8 inches. Again, I do think there could be some higher amounts near the lake. Southern Michigan, again, it seems like the snow will be weakening by the time it gets here, but up to 3 to 4 inches is possible, if not up to 5, as you saw by some models. And you can see the RAP does deliver rather a decent amount of snow across central Pennsylvania, which I think are overdone by this model. I think they will be rather limited to the northeastern part of the area, or the state. But these amounts right here, I think, are also a bit high, but it's possible. Now, I showed you all the models, right? Generally, the track is the same, but just look at that cutoff, even exemplified by this. And even if the track is, rather confident, this cutoff makes it a nightmare. I mean, look, that I don't think it will be that sharp. I mean, that would be just ridiculous. I can't even fathom how disgustingly hard this would be. I mean, look at that north. I mean, a few miles, 0 inches, and then a few miles, 12 inches. That's rather brutal, right? I think it could be something more like this, where you could see over a larger spread, it goes into a lighter event into a heavier event versus, not a single snowflake to a foot of snow. That's more of like a lake effect type uncertainty. And I want to show you the uncertainty that is exemplified by this. So let's just show you as many cities as I can, right? Obviously, not all of these will be for you, these cities, but hopefully I could cover your area. Expected snowfall for northern Illinois, you could see 6, 7, 8 inches, again, possibly heavier near the lake. If it's an overmaker, overproducer, you can see this is what could happen. But if it underperforms, this is what could happen. Still the biggest snow of the year, even if it underperforms for the Chicago area, right? So that is that. Let's take a look at our next city. We have Iowa. I just pulled up the whole state. This is where I want to show you something really cool, or not cool. Look at that, Waterloo, 1 to 7. That's the range they have. Couple hours, maybe 12 hours, a bit less, before this system occurs. That's pretty ridiculous. 3 to 10 inches, 5 to 10 inches. That's still a pretty big range right there. Obviously a bit higher confidence and heavier snow here, but still just a massive range of snowfall, which makes things unconfident. Look at that, 10 to 14 inches expected. If it overperforms, which they're just showing it overperforming of the whole area, I do think that there could be certain locations that just overperform. I would not be surprised whatsoever to see some 16, 17 inch amounts across southern Iowa. Now, I don't think it will be this widespread. I do think that there will be some amounts like that. Low-end amounts, again, this is something that's just if it underperforms as a system overall. I do think that some locations will end up with some lighter amounts, even if they're, in the orange right there. So definitely a significant variant across these amounts, but the confidence is still relatively good. Northern Missouri, Kansas City, notice the drop-off is rather steep. Not, it's not ridiculous, but it is rather sharp. Notice that over a course of, say 60, 70 miles, it goes from less than an inch to, well over a foot into Nebraska City. And again, as I mentioned, I don't think that this line will overall do a shift to the south. But if you just get a few pockets of heavier snow that occur here, I would not be surprised to see some of these 6-inch amounts maybe move into, say, just north of Kansas City. While also I would not be surprised to see some of these amounts right here potentially get into that more of that 4-inch range. It's it's usually not as uniform. It's usually a bit more scattered, these lines, if you look at the total snowfall reports after the system. This is expected snow. If it overperforms as a whole entire system, look at that. Very high amounts, even for Kansas City, for example. Look at that, St. Joseph, 9, Maryville, 15. So even for Kansas City, the high end is 4 and the low end is absolutely 0. So that's a pretty decent range as well. Now, the amounts get crazier than that if you look at some areas across Nebraska. Expected snowfall, right? Decent amounts. Notice North Platte 3 to 4. I would not be surprised if this, again, gets elevated towards the 6 to 8 range in total. Notice that if this overperforms, it could be something like this. And again, this is if it overperforms as a whole system. I feel as if there could be a lot of pockets that, up here get 7, 6 inches and over here get more towards a 5-inch. Obviously, though, generally as you get towards Nebraska City, Lincoln, the amounts will be heavier. And I think these amounts are a bit, high, obviously, high in amount. But I would not be surprised to see some amounts definitely reaching that red criteria, which is potentially over 18 inches, right? And that's their official range. So let's continue looking at more cities. This is now Milwaukee, southern Wisconsin, another area where things could vary quite a bit. I mean, look at the low end, very little across Milwaukee to the high end where it could be up to 9 inches. So definitely quite a change up. And this is something that exciting, but also kind of dreadful as how much it could change. I would say as of now that obviously this is more likely than a low end amount, but I think what they did right here with this expected snow was rather accurate. Would not be surprised to see some of these yellow colors reach into southern Wisconsin with potentially 4 to 5 inches across these areas rather than 2 to 3. More cities. Let's take a look in New York, right? 2 inches. That's our expected snowfall. Again, it could be closer to 3 or 4. If it overperforms, they're generally not that big of a range. They're pretty confident in that. So that is for the New York area, New York City. Detroit, notice that right now they have 2 to 3. Again, I would say that there's probably going to be a bit higher amounts, especially since this is a bit further out than, say, the Midwest. This will be occurring more into Tuesday. Notice that if it overperforms, 4 to 5 inches is possible. If it underperforms, something like this could occur as well. Notice, let's take a look at Quad Cities, another area that could get a ton of snow. I couldn't find its probabilistic snowfall because it was old and outdated, so I just wanted to show you what they're expecting without misinforming anyone. Notice, again, general amounts, obviously higher as you get towards the south and west into Washington, Ottumwa. But notice the range for some of these cities is rather ridiculous, 2 to 7, Memphis 4 to 8, so that's still an uncomfortable range. And this is northeastern Kansas. Notice a very sharp cutoff as well, right? And if it overperforms, it could be some generous amounts of snow, even for Topeka, right? And again, I think it could be more spotty than just a general overperformance. It could be just a few areas that overperform, for example. That's, I think, the system has potential for that. And notice that for 12 inches plus, some of these, or 8 inches plus, some of these, especially right there in Nebraska, have a confidence of 90% or more. So that is basically it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all on the next episode. That is it for today. Again, this system will be dropping a lot of rain. I unfortunately could not go over the severe weather side in detail, but regardless, I want to show you that there is a slight threat. Notice that even if it's slight, it could be a impactful one. So definitely stay tuned to your local National Weather Service and keep up with any watches or warnings. All right, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all guys on the next episode. See ya.